Yo guys, what is up? Max on our first Descendant video, and today we are going over my Valby guide. Now, Valby does have a ultimate Descendant coming out in 2 weeks, which I plan on fully investing into. On today's Valby build, I've got a pretty minimal spec that still puts out a ton of damage. I made a video yesterday talking about her supply moisture mod that can give her some ridiculous gun damage scaling. I did make a few mistakes in that video, so we're going to be correcting them today. We're also going to be going over multiple setups on Valby for bossing, mobbing, and like specific, just kind of like AoE spam build that's going to be really, really fun. But the goal of this video is to, one, set you up on your current Valby so that you can get her going because she's incredibly fun, but also get you to understand how she's going to work and how we're going to scale her damage up like crazy for when Ultimate Valby comes out. And obviously, I'll have an updated guide for that. Hope you guys enjoy the video. Let's get right into it. So to start us off, Valby is inspired by a laundry machine. Very cool. All of her abilities apply a debuff called Laundry. This is going to reduce your or enemy's electrical resist, which means that she pairs very well with things that do electrical damage. You can throw on electrical damage on your weapons using a Thunder Cage. Playing with bunnies is great. She also reduces non-attribute resistance as well. So if you're playing with someone who's using like a Glay Massacre build or so on and so forth, you can also debuff for those kind of things. Now, the way that her skills work are they're all dot skills and all of them stack their dots. So in order to get the most damage out of Valby, you're not just going to wanting to be using one skill. You're going to want to be clicking all of your buttons. And the way that she works is she's really good at just covering an area. If you've ever seen the game Splatoon, you want to play Valby like you're playing Splatoon, basically. If you see a spot that isn't blue, you want to be covering those blue spots and just constantly covering enemy spawns. She's great on defense. She's great whenever you need to lock down an area, constantly covering enemy spawns with water so that your teammates deal more damage, you deal more damage, and she can be built very versatilely to do a lot of crazy things. So real quick, the one is a bubble bullet. It does decent impact damage, but this is mainly your bread and butter way to spread water. It is the cheapest MP costing skill of Valby's kit. Valby's abilities do actually cost a fair bit of like MP or mana to cast. However, if you're not using her like skill modules, you can get water intake, which means that you're going to get a 30% decreased cost of your skills. And your 1 is a great way to just start off your damage rotation. Your 2 and your 3 will both snapshot if you're on water. So for example, if I'm on water and then I hit my 3, I will get a snapshotted decrease of the mana that it costs to use this thing. And then that we're able to like set up all of our damage by throwing down our 1. So 1, not a lot of damage, but it's very good as a opener into your like damage rotation because it'll snapshot your 2 and your 3 so that they both cost less. So solid skill all around. Next up, we've got the 2. This is Plop Plop. These names are ridiculous. Note that the laundry debuff doesn't stack based off your abilities. It's like a set debuff, but the actual dot damage of the different things will stack. Your Plop Plop is very helpful as a teleport. If you're doing a hard mode dungeon, you can just teleport through a whole bunch of lasers, which is really great. It's really nice for mobility as well. You can't cast it while you're in the air, which is a bit of a bummer, but it's also really helpful as a knockdown. One of the things that Valby wants to do is keep enemies in her dot. So if you do the 1, all the enemies are in their dot, and now you do the 2, now they're knocked down. Now they're not going to leave our dot for a little bit longer time. So that's why I like doing the 1 into the 2, so you can kind of knock them down and keep them there. Next up for the 3, Cleanup. Cleanup is fantastic. It's her highest dot damage skill of her like initial 3, and it gives her 50% DR if you're doing bosses, if you're about to get hit by an attack, you're in Pyromancer and he's sending out a bunch of things that are going to hurt you, or you know damage is incoming. For bossing, this ability just gives you 50% DR, which is amazing. It also lets you pass through enemies, which is also really nice for like big mobbing situations, but it's also her biggest damage. So usually I like to do that last. And it's a mobility skill. It just gives you slightly less speed than Bunny's 2, her sprint. So it makes Valby the second fastest Descendant in the game, which is very, very nice. And then lastly, we've got the 4. The 4 is a little bit weird. So in order to properly use the 4, you can't use it as your opener. The reason for that is the 4 only pulls in enemies that are afflicted with laundry. It says it creates a laundry bomb, dealing continuous damage and inflicting toad on nearby enemies with laundry. So if you want to pull in enemies with the 4, you have to first inflict them with your debuff, and then you can use the 4. So this is kind of what you're gonna like throw your 1 down. Now these enemies are inflicted with our thing, and now I can cast that, and he's gonna get pulled into it. Obviously a little bit too far for those guys, but that's kind of how you want to use the 4. You want to make sure that you're actually inflicting enemies with it, and then you can cast it, and then they will get pulled. A lot of the times people are just kind of spamming this into a group and hoping that it pulls them, where the 4 does inflict laundry. So like if you like are direct impacting enemies with it, they will get pulled into it. But ideally you are casting your 1 first, or your 2 or your 3, and then using your 4. And the 4 is one of the best grouping abilities. If you're using the Thunder Cage, it just makes the Thunder Cage explosion hit an entire room of enemies. And on this build, we're going to have it on about a 15-second cooldown, which is really nice. But as you can see, a little bit more awkward at pulling enemies if we don't have them afflicted with our debuff to start. Next up for our reactor, ideally, I didn't get the perfect reactor, but ideally you roll crit chance and crit damage on your reactor. We're going to be using a Thunder Cage mounting. Thunder Cage is a fantastic weapon for her because it does lightning explosions, and that lightning, we're going to get boosted, and the Thunder Cage is just a disgusting weapon. But you're going to look for non-attribute dimension. Valby is a little bit trickier to pick what you want to use as a reactor on her. The big thing is that her 1 is fusion, the 4 is fusion, but the 2 and the 3 are dimension, and the 3 is kind of your big damage, and you can basically always have up the 2. I like using this a lot, so I went for dimension. You could definitely go for fusion. I do think dimension is a slightly better choice for the reactor, and we also got the legendary reactor so that we're getting a 160% increase, or a 60% increase when we're mounting with the Thunder Cage. Mine rolled non-attribute skill power ratio and skill duration up. Both nice things, but in a perfect world, I'd be rolling skill crit chance and skill crit damage, which we'll talk about in a second. So next we get to talk about our weapons, but before we do that, we got to talk about supply moisture. Now, this is a mod that is a Transcendent mod for Valby that I made a video on yesterday. I said that this gives you a final increase to your crit chance on your weapons. I was wrong. The idea was right. But I explained it incorrectly, so I just want to correct that real quick. So supply moisture gives us a 20% increase to our firearm critical hit rate, 20% increase to our skill crit rate, 10% duration up, and a 2% increase in our like status effect trigger rate. How this works is it just adds a flat base to your weapon. So for example, when you look at like the Tamer, for example, the Tamer's got a base of like 10% crit chance. If we put on supply moisture, that goes 10 plus 20. Same with the Thunder Cage. The Thunder Cage has a base of 20% right here. If we add this, it goes up to 40%. Now note that this doesn't take into account your like crit hit rolls. So if you want more detailed information, you can actually go to the go-to info, and then you can see that my Thunder Cage has 22% crit chance. Once again, that is without any modules on. So that 13% is increasing that 20%. It's just not displaying correctly. And then if we go to my actual crit page, you'll see that I have a 82% increase of my critical hit rate. So the math for this, the way it works out, is we're going to do my 22.6, which is my base of my weapon, plus 20% from supply moisture, which gives me 42.6%. And then we're going to do 42.6% times our 1.82% increase, which gives us to 78% crit chance, rounded 77.5, but the game rounds up. So now you can see that my weapon, real quick, is currently at a 39% crit chance. When I use my water skill, now we're standing on the water, and now we click over. There's our 78% crit rate on our Thunder Cage. So what supply moisture allows us to do is full send it into crit on our weapons. This is my Thunder Cage crit build for just general play. Sweeping Squad is just for mobbing. If you're not going to be mobbing, you can swap this out for a different mod. Either like an element is pretty nice. You can throw on electric here. The Firing Fiesta mod is actually pretty nice as well. Slap that on for not consuming rounds after you are shooting this thing. But the core of this build is we're going to be getting a lot of base damage with rifle reinforcement and action and reaction. We're getting our fire rate up, and then we're going to be grabbing as much crit as we can. Remember, the more crit we have, the more we get out of supply moisture. So we've got better insight and edging shot, so we're getting tons of crit chance. We're getting reload focus, so we reload faster, and we're getting reload focus plus better concentration plus concentration priority, which gives us a 6 times multiplier on our Thunder Cage whenever we're critting, and we're critting 78% of the time. So 78% of the time, we're dealing 6x damage on this thing, which is just disgusting. And if we want to throw it on for mobbing, we can use Sweeping Squad for a little bit more firearm attack to help make up for the loss of damage from edging shot, because we do lose a little bit of damage. Sweeping Squad more than makes up for that. And this is just an absolute massive beast of a weapon for like basically everything. I still need to like upgrade my Thunder Cage so that its specific legendary attribute procs more often and in a bigger radius. I just haven't gotten to that yet. But that is our Thunder Cage build. Now, the other 2 weapons that you can use on Valby that are really fun. I mean, she can kind of use any weapon because you can turn any weapon into a crit thing. But I've been having a lot of fun with the Tamer. We're going to be using Real Life Fighter, which gives us stacking damage against weak points. So this gives us a ton of firearm attack, action and reaction for more attack, insight, better concentration, fire rate up, and concentration priority. All of these things are fantastic. I don't quite have the catalyst to be able to use edging shot yet on our Tamer, which would push its damage even higher. Obviously, we want to be building as much crit as possible. I just don't have very many catalysts on this thing. But the Tamer on this build is going to be critting. You can get it to about 50% crit chance, which is wild. I'm slightly missing a little bit of crit chance that I'd like to pick up, but right now, it's at a 41% crit chance rate with a 5x multiplier, and it's one of the highest DPS weapons in the game, which is disgusting. The last weapon to mention on Valby is the Python. Now, I currently don't have like a full Python build yet. I still need to put an activator and a catalyst on this, but the Python is a very interesting weapon on Valby because of its unique ability, which is the Prey debuff. As you hit weak points with the Python, you're going to reduce enemies' non-attribute resistance per stack. As you get more Pythons and level up its unique ability, its duration is going to go from 1 second debuff to a 2-second debuff, and you'll be able to shred more resistances. The thing that I was noticing about this weapon is the more damage that I'm dealing, the more the resistance shred actually makes a difference on. And you're also going to need to get multiple Pythons to like really start benefiting from this thing. I do think this weapon is best in slot once we are building a ton of damage and we're rocking ultimate Valby, but the damage on it on a 1 is just really not helpful, especially when we're not dealing like all that much damage quite yet. So as you can see, I'm doing 5,593 dots. I don't have Python mounting right now, so I just lost like half of my damage. But just to give you an example, 5,593, if I hit some weak points on this enemy, you'll see that the dot goes from like 5,500 to like 6,000 at very best. So not like the world's greatest thing, but once again, when those numbers are bigger and we're fully built around it and we've got the Python leveled and we can like fully invest into our Valby with catalysts and stuff, the Python is going to increase our dot damage a pretty ridiculous amount. I've heard of Valby's hitting for like anywhere from 300 to 500k on their dots. So very good weapon to start investing into. Just don't think it's super important to start using right off the bat with her. I personally also really like running the Afterglow Sniper on Valby, just because it is a crit monster. The Afterglow Sniper has a unique ability that when you hit a weak point, you inflict death propagation. On hitting an enemy commander or Colossus, increase your firearm critical hit rate and apply this effect to the attack. You're getting stacking like weak point damage and critical hit rate. This basically makes it a 100% crit chance sniper for Valby. So for example, if I throw down my little bubble and then we pop over to our info, now this thing has a 94% crit hit rate, and as soon as it procs its thing, it's going to be guaranteed critting. This thing could pop some serious damage on Valby, which is really, really fun. Let's see if we get a nice shot. There's a million. Another 1.1 million shot. But I've gotten this thing to hit 2 million on some enemies on Valby. And these are the mods that I'm running for that sniper. It's currently not even having a potato in it, and this thing is going to be hitting like a truck. It's already at 561k DPS, and that's not factoring in basically critting on every single shot. But yeah, that is the Afterglow. All right, now we get to talk about Descendant modules. We're going to talk about our mobbing setup first, and then we'll talk about the non-crit mobbing setup, and then we'll talk specifically about bossing. Now, Valby is a Descendant that you want to invest a lot into because she wants duration, she wants AoE, she wants cooldown, she wants damage, and with Supply Moisture, she really wants a lot of crit. Right now, if we are playing with her skills, if we're standing on our water, we are going to be getting a 59% skill crit rate chance, which is kind of ridiculous. As you'll see, like if we just pop over through our skills and our rotation, everything is going to be getting crit. It is just constant crits, which is kind of insane. The only thing about building crit is it's expensive, and we don't have room for a lot of other stuff, so we lose a bit of quality of life. So I've got skill insight for big crit hit rate, increased defense, which is just necessary, increased HP, which is also necessary, and then we're able to throw in front lines here for more skill crit hit rate, skill expansion for more range. Skill expansion, HP, and defense all seem like absolutely mandatory mods on her. Technician is obviously not the best in slot mod. It's just a multiplier that works out pretty well for her right now. But if you wanted to like absolutely min-max her, you would swap out Technician for Dimension Specialist is what I would do. That's going to give you a larger multiplier on her 2 and her 3. I don't hate using Technician because, one, I already have it leveled and I'm being lazy, but two, it works for all of her skills, not just one or not just 2 of them. But ideally, if you're min-maxing, you would go for Dimension on the Technician slot. But this is a build with 1 Catalyst. You don't need to max Supply Moisture, and it gives you everything that you need. You've got the crit chance, you got your survivability, you got your AoE. Big thing that you're missing here on this particular setup is a bit of cooldown. So if you can roll cooldown on your reactor here, that's like fantastic. But this is kind of getting all the big things that you need. Next up for our non-crit setup, this is where we get tons of quality of life. We're going to get our defense, our HP, our multiplier, but we're also going to be picking up focus on non-attribute for a ton of extra base damage, which Technician is going to work off of. And we get MP Collector, so we're going to be constantly able to spam our abilities. Skill Expansion gives us more range, and MP Conversion is going to give us a ton of cooldown. That paired with focus on non-attribute gives us a 12-second cooldown on her 3, which is disgusting. This is basically always up because you get 2 stacks of it. On her 1, we've got it on a 5-second cooldown, which, you know, because it lasts for 11 seconds, this is also a buff that you just always have up. So you're able to spam, you're able to use MP Collector, and this setup feels really good. It's not as much damage as the, like, crit build, but it's got so much more quality of life for just spamming and kind of playing Valby how she's meant to be played. But once again, not as much dot damage. And then we get to bossing. Now, bossing, we're just focusing on making Valby a absolute beefcake on our bossing setup. We want to be able to constantly be able to use our Supply Moisture, but also not have to worry about dying. We're going to have 17k HP on her with 30k defense, which is kind of very tanky. Plus, you know, if you've ever got an attack coming in, you can swap into your liquid form, which gives you another 50% DR. But the big things here, we're using time distribution for more HP, HP amplification, and increased HP. All of these things are going to make us very tanky with some defense, some skill extension, so our dots lay on the ground for longer for our moisture. Skill expansion means that there's less gaps in our dots, and then since we're making kind of like a weapon Descendant, we can use Walk a Tightrope for just a little bit more damage and skill power whenever we are low health, which, you know, when you're sitting in bosses, you are going to be low health a bit. The big thing that would be really nice on Valby for bossing, which obviously we can't fit in here, is if you could then throw in damage and crit. That's kind of like the big thing that we're missing. Is in a perfect world, you're using Supply Moisture, so your abilities are doing a bunch of damage and your weapons are doing a bunch of damage, but just kind of like under the restrictions of only using 1 catalyst. We set it up so that Valby becomes a pure weapon Descendant. You'll be able to face tank most things and also be able to output some pretty silly damage with her weapons. And then in a perfect world, this is also built for damage and crit as well, so that you get the best of both worlds, but not going to happen with 1 catalyst. For our external components, we're just rocking 3 legendary pieces with 2-piece set Annihilation, which gives us increased duration, and we're able to get a ton of HP and defense. However, if you want to min-max Valby for like the most amount of damage that you can get on her with her weapons, which there's a way to do that, which I think is going to be really interesting and I think potentially pretty meta for gun descendants, is wearing mixed veteran set with mixed decimator set. The decimator set gives you 5.1% crit rate on your weapons for a 2-piece bonus, and the veteran set gives you 5.1% increased crit. So what you can wear is you can wear the decimator top, which decimator top is going to give you max HP, and then decimator bottom also gives you defense. So you've got HP defense as your top parts. And then if you wear the veteran middle, you're going to get veteran is going to give you max HP on the sensor, and then the memory on veteran gives you defense. So you've got 4 pieces of gear, all with inherent defense and HP. And then you're going to get 2 multipliers of 5.1% crit rate on your weapons, which is kind of disgusting. And you can farm these things at level 100 from level 100 enemies. In the story, they drop like really low level, but you can actually farm them from specific spots from like hard mode. It's just their drop rates are pretty freaking low. So I wasn't able to get a full setup for you guys for this video, but I do plan on farming those out and kind of having that double crit rate mods, full stacking max HP and defense, which should be pretty nasty. Guys, that is going to do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know which Descendant you want to see next. I'm getting requests for like updated build guides of Descendants I've already done, or just keep branching out and keep doing more Descendants so we can try to cover the whole roster. I personally would like to try to get the whole roster covered and then kind of go back and do updated videos. I will have like an updated guide for our weapons though. That should be out either today or tomorrow, for like updated build guides in general for like Thunder Cage and Tamer. We also probably would need to have a Eternal Willpower updated build guide, or a build guide for that weapon, because that weapon is doing some crazy things. But yeah, guys, that is it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care. Peace.